Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. We're 2 months of the summer down. June's gone. July, this is it. We're in the final stretch. Come Sunday, we're in August, which means two things. If you haven't gotten your vacations in, get them in now. Hopefully, hopefully the new JetBlue Spirit Airlines merger might help you on your travel. With some discounted flights if the plane actually shows up and leaves and lands all at one time or correctly where they're supposed to be. And number two, it means football season's right around the corner. Training camps are underway. And, for an NFL fan, particularly from Philadelphia, the Eagles, don't hold it against me. We are counting down for the season to start. Remember, there's only 2 preseason games now. Not 4 like before back in the day. So before you know it, we'll be watching real games here, and we'll be in September because I have a feeling August is just going to absolutely fly by. Let's get some housekeeping under the way. And MSPinitiative.com. This is where everything that we do exists. You can find this session and every other session under the Sessions tab in podcast and video format. Still trying to get our giveaways together. Sorry, it's been taking some time. I'd like to announce, this is like my soft announcement. Our first MSP community block party will be working in conjunction with the great people over at Datto. So you'll see Datto is in DC 11, 12, and 13. On the second night, the 12th, you will see on the agenda the MSP community block party. And this will be actually at the Nationals ballpark. That's right. We've rented out an entire stadium for you. So we hope that even if you're not, we hope that you attend DattoCon, but even if you don't make it to DattoCon, but happen to just be in the area, you can come to this, MSP community block party. So you can see the registration link is here. If you go to dattocon.com under agenda, second day, which is Monday the 12th, scroll down and here's your link to register for that block party. We'll be providing transportation for people who are at DattoCon. So you don't have to walk there, scooter there, bike there, Uber there. I mean, I guess you could. By the way, probably the most expensive scooters I've ever ridden. It was more expensive to ride a scooter in Washington, D.C. than to park, which we all know is not exactly cheap there, if you didn't already know. So anyway, that is my soft announcement. It's our first of many announcements of things that we're working on for the rest of the year. The other thing I want to mention is CompTIA's ChannelCon is next week. It's right around the corner in Chicago. If you happen to be coming in early, the conference actually starts on the 2nd. On the 1st, which is Monday night, we are co-hosting a boat party. So if you haven't already heard about it and you're interested in joining, drop me a line, see if we can get you on there. But yeah, ChannelCon is next week. I'll be there. I know a ton of people are going to be there. One of those last unaffiliated conferences out there. And we'll see how many people make it out to Chicago. So that is what's kind of on the immediate. I have more stuff that's coming. Don't worry. We'll post it and we'll announce it. But that is my first kind of soft formal announcement of some of the things that we've been baking up. And yeah. First time I've ever formally rented an entire major league ballpark. It's been interesting. But hey, I'm going to cross it off the list as we did it. Once it's all said and done, I think you guys really have a good time. So there's that. We are waiting for our kind of co-guest speaker today. I was running a little bit behind schedule, but don't worry. I told him I'd fill in the gap until he got in here. But in the meantime, as usual, right, we'll kind of, for the people that jumped onto the call live, we'll let you jump in and chat a little bit as well. It's a little bit interactive. Like Matthew Fox. Matthew Fox said he's going to do one of these with me. Right there, buddy? See, I caught him by surprise. He's probably just listening and he didn't think.
Yeah, I'm here, man. How you doing today?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I was just on a ladder installing a new light in my ceiling, and I heard my name. I almost fell over.
Oh yeah, see that? I love catching people off guard. That's when like we don't plan these things. We just roll with it. How's the light?
How's the light? The light's not even up yet because I'm talking to you. But the
Well,
light can wait. The light can wait.
don't fall off the ladder, man. I can't tell you how many ladders I've fallen off. I have bumps and scrapes to prove it, but be safe over there, pal.
Hey, you know, falling off roofs, ladders, it's my thing. Don't worry about it. MSP marketing.
You're like you're like a home improvement. Remember the show, right? In the
That's
90s, and the
it.
guy would always break things where you know, and then like Al would have to come in and fix behind him. That's you, right?
Like I've never been electrocuted, like fooling around in a cabinet or something, right? I mean, that's part of the job. Get used to it.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes they'll shock you into being more alive, right?
That's it, man. That's it.
Right on. Well, I like to introduce everyone, and you know we're recording this, so hopefully the people who watch this will catch it as well. Tyler Smith from Nord Security. Tyler, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. How are you, George?
You know, trying to stay out of trouble, but everybody who knows me well knows that that's pretty hard to do.
Well,
I kind of stumble in.
I got to know you pretty
stumble
well
into it.
like a few weeks ago, and one day you're on land, the next day you're in a helicopter. So you tend to chase danger.
Yeah, you know what? Life's short, right? Got to check those boxes off for sure. But the helicopter is probably the best way to travel because like no traffic, especially when going from what was it? We were going from White Plains to Newark. It was like an hour in traffic, or just a quick helicopter ride in between airports, right?
It's called being resourceful. That's exactly right.
Exactly. I want to, you know, one of these days, I had told myself back in the day, because like traffic is one of those things that like, you know, got me bald here. And for a guy that did a lot of windshield time back, you know, over the years, I always wanted to get a helicopter license so I could just land anywhere. Now I find out that's not like that, right? You can't just land in somebody's backyard just like that in most places. We'll see how these human based drones, right? Big enough where you can just jump into, you know, like a drone taxi. They have them in Dubai here already, and they just takes you to where you want to go and hope that it doesn't run out of battery or, you know, hits propeller brakes. But we'll see. We'll see if that ever comes to fruition here. Right now, I'm still waiting for drone delivery. You know, like
Yeah,
I know they got it
where
in
are we on
Texas.
that?
Well, apparently they've been piloting it down south. Surprise, surprise. I'm waiting for it to come up north here a little bit, but I'm sure it's a little bit more congested up here.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we're getting teased with all of this drone stuff and advanced technology. It's like, let's go ahead and start beta testing some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they've been talking about like pizza delivery by drone and Amazon delivery by drone. Like, you know, by the time everything's all said and done, like the post office will still be moving paper, right?
They've always got to have a reason to keep the business, man.
Well, and they did just raise the postal rates. If anybody paid attention, I'm sure you didn't. But anyway, Tyler, why don't you do a quick intro, right? And maybe tell people a little bit about your background. How did you get into the technology space versus something else? And then we'll talk shop a little bit.
Certainly, yeah. So I've been in the tech space going on, I guess, 12 years now. So I started at Protivity, and if you don't know them, they're a global consulting firm. And I had started right when the high tech initiative came out for healthcare. So we did a lot of EMR migrations, modernizing your standard healthcare processes. So working with large IDNs. So think like HCA Healthcare, CHS, Kaiser Permanente. And that introduced me to a vast array of like project management, business analysis, QA. So you just naturally developed a vision into how enterprise tech worked, and then shifted from there to get into data center and managed services. Right when co-location was kind of at its peak, and cloud had just emerged as an enterprise need. So when you married those two together, you get that introduction into that on-prem versus colo versus virtualization world. And that naturally led into security. So now I'm with Nord Security, and I manage our East Coast partnerships. So you probably know NordVPN. If you've watched a YouTube video or any form of digital web content over the past 10 years, you probably know NordVPN. So our Nord Security team is the business and enterprise introduction from that decade of security experience, taking that to that SMB, mid-market, and enterprise level. So happy to be here. Happy to get involved with your team. I think we've built a pretty good partnership so far. So look forward to telling everybody more and learning more.
So yeah, that's fantastic. Appreciate the walk. I mean, a lot of us, right, on the other side came up, right, through the small business world and kind of like pushed upstream. Sounds like you started an enterprise and like you're kind of, sprinkling down a little bit, which is great, right? Because like different perspectives, different levels of technology, that's kind of what makes this cool, right? Because everybody has a different kind of lens that they see things through, and then like cool, things usually result from, everybody getting together and doing stuff. I know you guys just announced a partnership with Pax8. So,
Big news,
that's a
big news.
cool
Yep.
entry into, like the larger channel, right? A lot of, MSPs get a lot of their licensing, especially Microsoft through Pax8. So that's a great announcement. That was like within the last 4 weeks, I think. It wasn't that long ago. For people who haven't run into Nord and just jumping on your site here, maybe just give us a walkthrough, like what do you guys offer and how does that apply to the sub, I don't know, 300 employee business?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you'll click on products, George, that'll take us to an introduction to kind of what we're bringing into this partner space. So you've got your NordVPN, which that's, again, that fundamental VPN product that was primarily built around that consumer effort. So standing up a virtual network, if you were in Germany and wanted to watch Netflix and, United States, for example, that NordVPN concept, crypto grew a lot in that. Then you look at Nord Layer, which is that's kind of NordVPN on steroids, built for the enterprise. So managing a team, creating those gateways that are encrypted traffic, that are easy user adoption, with a sophisticated intro into that zero trust conversation. So everybody's talking about ZTNA, SASE, and that edge network protection. Nord Layer is a great intro to that. That coexists with almost any tech stack an SMB or mid-market customer could have, but it's also equally as easy to manage that from an admin. So you don't need a network architect, you don't need a system architect. We often go live with customers and their CFO or their controller or accountant may be the admin on the account. Then we've got NordPass, which is your encrypted password manager, which those are becoming more sophisticated in terms of like sharing notes, putting customer credentials in there that aren't necessarily tied to like a login of some sort, but so you still want those to be encrypted and share those with internal employees that need access to it. And what we're really excited about is Nord Locker. So Nord Locker is your fully encrypted file and storage that's going to set on any user device. So Windows, Linux, Mac, iPhone, we're agnostic. And then it also has a web access application. So we can do daily backups on your local device, fully encrypted. And if the user loses that device, it's MFA protected with that zero knowledge architecture, but they can also get onto Google Chrome, Safari, et cetera, and access those files and share those amongst the team, fully encrypted. So when you think of Nord, think of those three pillars, right? We're going to protect your network and endpoints when it comes to accessibility to your files and applications. We're going to protect your credentials. We're going to protect your files and storage with full encryption. All of this is license-based. We're not deploying hardware. We're not drop shipping boxes. There's no delays in the sell cycle because you need to get hardware from overseas, shipped to a certain customer point. All of this is cloud-based and license-based, which, as you referenced, right, that 300 user mid-market customer, it's a swift deployment. Everything from a UI perspective is right in front of you. You're not spending a lot of time with your help desk having to take tickets in and understand how to reset this and deploy that. It's wildly user friendly. And that's a lot of the feedback we're getting already from the Pax8 deployment. And we're getting that feedback from other customers that are saying, hey, we got rid of an on-prem firewall or we got rid of an on-prem VPN. This is a lot easier because I think we can both agree that that hybrid work model is probably here to stay, if not some flavor of it. And all of our products say, hey, we get it. We've built these they're battle tested on the backbone of what NordVPN built, but also NordVPN was built around that business to consumer usability, that user adoption. The rest of these products have the same mentality from an architecture perspective. Easy to use, easy to deploy. Once you deploy, you don't want to have to revisit it, right? The more, if you get day 2 onward, if you're revisiting deployments and having to constantly speak with your customers and users about how to do this, what does this mean, the product probably isn't as easy as it should be. We've kind of swung the pendulum and said, we want to minimize that. Once you deploy it, you kind of set it and forget it, and it's going really well.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you have kind of like these 4 like core products, and then this seems like it's a little bit more upstream, right?
Yeah. So,
Maybe
and when it comes to like what we're doing in channel, the Nord WL is going to be a little bit ahead on the roadmap, but we just want to introduce people to it when it comes to being able to manage various VPN products. If you want to build a custom LAN, if you want to build a custom VPN, that's going to be your SMB target focus. Think of a company that's fully remote, they just got off the ground. That could be a good entry point for them.
Cool. So, you know, it seems like you guys have really been, I mean, the consumer side, right? This NordVPN, you know, that you probably have been, you know, advertising in all the various places, but, you know, it seems like you've largely, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm just, you know, hypothesizing. Seems like you've been playing in enterprise space for quite a long time. You know, when, you know, a lot of the guys in MSP land are dealing with, let's say 20, 50, 100 person companies, you know, so is the idea for them to augment what they have in their firewall investments and stuff like that? Or is this considered something that maybe is a replacement to, you know, all of the, I'll call it, you know, incumbent firewall vendors, right? There's the Sonic Walls and the Fortinets and the Sophoses and the Checkpoints, and I could go on and on and on. Why this versus those?
I think the most important thing here, George, is we coexist with any of their current tech stack. So they're not having to rip and replace anything. In the event they're modernizing their network, all in and around the concept of how are they going to access files and applications, whether that's in a colo, whether that's in a local network, whether that's in whether it's a SaaS-based application, say Salesforce or QuickBooks. We can build site-to-site tunnels to access all those within all the users that are in that environment. Build those walls within the network that say George can access every application, but maybe the engineering team only needs to access some flavor of a Scrum tool or some flavor of an HR tool for your payroll and compliance. Based on what that architecture is, it's wildly simple to set that up. And then we're rolling out firewall as a service with Nord Layer, which is going to be not an add-on cost. This is just going to be a feature that customers can add based on what their current configuration is. And I think what we hear the most of when it comes to buying new technology, and you and I have been in this world a long time, most of those cycles are based on license expiration, or we just renewed this, we need to wait until it's this terms, whatever the case is, some flavor of discrepancy with what they currently have. We can roll out any Nord product in phases to bring on that slow migration of what that network's going to be. Keep your on-prem firewall in place. There's no need to reconfigure any of that, but you can still access those applications with a fully encrypted tunnel. You look at the top 2 reasons from the Verizon DBIR report, which, you know, we don't partner with Verizon, we don't resell Verizon, but their DBIR annual report's a great lens into what happened over the previous year with security. And it goes into trends, et cetera. Credentials and phishing were the top 2 reasons that network breaches started. 45% were network credentials, then to about 20% was phishing, and then there were a few other categories that they measured. But what we're seeing the most of is encryption across the board. How can you demonstrate encryption? How can you provide your cyber insurance underwriter, or during an e-discovery assessment, how can you demonstrate network segregation? How can you demonstrate encrypted backup credentials and testing, et cetera? So many bullet points that have emerged in this cyber insurance world. And a lot of companies are coming to Nord and saying, hey, we thought we had this in place. We need network segregation. We thought we had a ZTNA set up, but it wasn't sophisticated. You know, that's fine. You don't have to do anything to your current stack. We can still build that. Nord's going to set on the end user devices. So you're not having to configure anything to local network gear. That's almost agnostic at this point. We're going to set on your local devices, build those site-to-site tunnels for anything you need access to. And now you're fully encrypted on a dedicated tunnel that's specific to your team and company.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like it's, hey, layer on now, and if you're reconstructing later, then all of the plumbing is there for you to take advantage of it.
That's exactly right. You know, we often have customers that say, we've got 5 offices, each office has 20 employees. We got 100 total employees. We're going to start with office 1 because in a year, we're going to not renew the lease there. Those employees are shifting into a remote schedule now. we'll start with Office 1. If you want to come back and add licenses and work with our team to configure Office 2, 3, 4, and 5 at a later time, that's perfectly fine. We're not trying to indict customers on this NRC and setup costs that typically they avoid when it comes to deploying new technology. We don't have any NRC and setup. We go right into that OpEx procurement model that the market's demanding, where you have visibility into usage. If you start with 100 licenses and then you go down to 50, that's perfectly fine. Again, if you start with 10 and go to 100 as you see fit on your schedule, that's perfectly fine. What we're trying to do is say, hey, that 5K, 10K initial setup charge, that's a blend of hardware and human capital hours and project management and setup. We're getting away from that. We'll work with the customer in the same capacity, but we're not trying to tell them it's all or nothing. We don't have minimums. There's nothing that prevents us from saying, you're a good use case. Now, our sweet spot is going to be that, 50 to 1,000 employee range, which caters really well to this MSP space. Even when you get under 50 users, it's the same level of deployment methodology. Would just tend to work with someone who's their MSP representative, someone who has a technical lens on the customer side to be able to set up site-to-site tunnels and roll out messaging around a password manager and what this means. And we can lean in and assist with all that too.
Yeah. No, like the learning curve, I mean, I've seen so many different products come into the marketplace, especially in MSP land. I call it sandbox, where the user adoption has been really low, right? Like they've tried to roll out the 4th password manager and it just didn't take hold for some reason, right? So, ease of use is certainly important. I mean, whether it's a doctor or a police officer or a warehouse worker, right? I mean, technical aptitude, you'd hope over time builds up, but that's not always necessarily true. So ease of use is important, right? In order to get adoption from the end user. And then like the fact that, this is kind of subscription based, you can go up, go down, no minimums. Is there is this month to month or how does it work?
So our billing terms are static when it comes to anything the customer wants. If we have customers that are on month to month, we have customers that are on quarterly, we have customers that do annual. That is effectively irrelevant on our end. It depends a little bit on the coming out of the gates. If it's 30 users and they're using Password Manager, it makes sense to just do annual, right? But we have some customers that say, hey, if we're phasing it, why don't we do quarterly? And as we grow quarterly, we'll start to see that usage rate increase, et cetera. We can revisit, plan around as needed. But I think a lot of what you see with adoption, I think you bring up a good point. When it comes to adoption, a lot of companies rely on the product itself to be visible. Is the product in front of our users? How do they log on? Are they having to enter 5 passwords every morning to get access to something? So the great thing about our Nord products, like specifically NordPass, is we've got iPhone applications. That's the same interface, same sign-in. They can use biometrics for that. So you're in an Apple phone, you use your Face ID. We've also got browser extensions across every browser. So when it comes to deployment, we'll visit with the customer 20, 30 minutes, roll out the tool, give them the criteria needed to use it. Once they import and start using the passwords, it's going to pop up to them every morning when they get onto their device. Sign in, here's your vault, here's your passwords. Nord Layer is even easier than that. So when it comes to that business VPN, Nord Layer is going to auto connect as soon as the users log onto their PC. It's going to auto connect to that dedicated server for their specific company that has all the protocols and routing policy built into the server. They're not having to do anything new every day. So that adoption piece, typically the reason companies can get lazy with adoption is it's not in front of them anymore. The accounting team isn't interested in learning a new tool often, or someone in manufacturing may not be interested in learning a new tool. We're trying to say, once we deploy, we're going to set it up to where it's auto configured. It's going to auto launch every time you log into your device. So that protection remains in place without the user saying, damn it, I lost my password, or I forgot how to sign into this. That in turn goes back to the help desk. That help desk starts to say, hey, we've had 19 tickets over this product. We're not even experts on the product. People are losing their password, et cetera. The key in moving forward, not only with Dora, but the market in general, people want swift deployments, ease of use. They want to see adoption rates increase because we all want to renew the term with that customer. Part of that is the customer kind of forgetting they have to log in, forgetting they have to use it. When the term comes around, it's, hey, you have 98 users that are logging in every day. We can see with the activity log. here you go. They're not reevaluating. They're not putting it out for an RFP. They're not trying to get price comparisons. They're saying this works. It's easy. Let's move forward.
No, I agree with that 100%. How's the, like, a lot of people have adopted, Microsoft 365, Azure SSO. How does that, is there any marriage there between the Microsoft stack?
So we integrate with Azure AD. If they want to push it out directly to their users, they can use that Azure integration. We also integrate with SSO and IDP. So whether they're using OneLogin or Okta, we can integrate with that where those users are saying, hey, I've already got my SSO and IDP for my facial recognition or fingerprint recognition. We simply integrate with that. So when they launch it on whatever device they're on, it's going to auto connect based on their biometrics. And keep in mind, George, one thing that's important.
But do you charge more for the SSO tax?
That comes with it. So with NordPass, there's two flavors. One includes the Azure AD, one doesn't include the Azure AD, but the price difference is nominal. It's $2 a user. So that at that point, that kind of separates that enterprise versus SMB and mid-market. But keep in mind, with any Nord product, one license protects 6 devices. So if George has a Nord Layer and NordPass license, he can deploy those licenses to his tablet, his Chromebook, his phone, his computer, up to 6 devices, which typically we see 3 to 4 devices per employee. So we said, hey, let's make the benchmark 6. If we get to a customer that has more than 6 devices per user, that's a great problem to have. Like, if you're in some flavor,
they're out there. They're out there. They're the tinkerers that keep on getting free samples. They're out there.
That's exactly right. And we're thinking, hey, if we need to find a path to that, that's a good problem to have.
I get you. That's exciting. I mean, like, there's, we've been hearing the word SASE for maybe 2 years now. There's been a few players that have really started like heavily marketing it, at least in MSP Sandbox. I don't know if a lot of people have really gone that way. I mean, it's still relatively untouched, I think. I mean, everybody's still using the old school, could be as simple as a log me in, believe it or not, or just a good old fashioned VPN. But, the edge use case is there. I think people are just a little bit learning what the differences are between, that kind of edge, kind of SASE type model, or like things are, kind of interwoven together versus separate products, right? That are kind of co-deployed, if you would, right? So there's a little bit of like a modernization occurring, right? In the technology that we've probably been using bits and pieces of, right? But it seems like it's, actually stitched together in such a way that, they actually their harmony happening right underneath the scenes, rather than, hey, this part's broken or this part doesn't like this part, and it's like 2 VPNs over, crossing over each other from different products and solutions. And then, the good old fashioned apps that everybody's been using for decades, like, they don't like that, right? Like, they start to break down when that overlap happens. So yeah, I mean, I think that, the other big thing that I think is out there is just, as everybody's adopting kind of that modern workplace type scenario, right? And, they don't want, 80 servers all over the place, right? Cloud or otherwise, right? So this could kind of, streamline what's happening, right? Whether you're still hybrid, prem-based, cloud-based, right? So sounds like there's a way to kind of overlap this in a more modern way. So it's kind of cool, right? I haven't even looked at any of this myself. I kind of was just checking things out right before the call. Obviously heard of Nord from the the announcement with PAX 8. Obviously you guys jumped on the bus. Hopefully you guys had a good time there as we were rolling through the Northeast. It was good weather, right? I think we skipped rain on almost every front, so that's good.
We got lucky there.
Yeah, I love traveling by tour bus is like a whole different medium, right?
That's
so
exactly. You get intimately familiar with your coworkers or
100%
or other peers on the bus.
100%. It's good learning time. I want to open this up to the people that are on the call. So Pete, Matthew, hey Lisa again, thanks for jumping on as usual. Brian, you're out there. Would love to hear what you're hearing out there on this type of stuff, right? Obviously, password managers have been out there for some time. I think SASE is still very new. I don't know if anybody's actually gone down that road. I would love to hear what your experience has been so far. And then just straight up, right? Like, are we starting to graduate from the hardware incumbent based VPN solutions, or, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Would love to hear what's happening out there. Just curious myself. Pete, I'm going to pick on you, buddy. You hiding behind your monitor and your microphone? Or maybe he's on a call. Matthew's still probably hanging that light. Hopefully didn't fall off the ladder.
I'm actually happy to report that I still have all of my
Good.
lens, fingers, everything's intact. The light is illuminated, and it was a success. Ticket set to closed, 5 stars.
Beautiful,
Good for
man.
you.
I
Good for
love
you.
that.
I was listening. I was listening in a bit, but clearly I had my drill going and stuff, so I didn't hear everything. But was I hearing that something like Nord's offering might someday replace point-to-point VPN, like between 2 sites?
So we can build those site-to-site tunnels, and when it comes to how they're accessing it, that site-to-site tunnel is going to go to that endpoint that the tunnel fall off is. So if it's a server that's hosted in a colo, regardless of what the site is, that's going to have access to via that dedicated tunnel. So that tunnel is going to operate, and the only fundamental need it has to operate is Wi-Fi. So whether that employee is on Starbucks Wi-Fi, a Marriott Wi-Fi, access to that shared server, that shared application, that shared network drive is still going to be on that site-to-site tunnel. So what I think the goal is, I think George brought up something interesting with SASE. Gartner predicts that by 2024, 40% of enterprises are going to adopt a SASE first network approach. And so that's enterprise. What you typically see from those Gartner stats is SMB and mid-market are about 35, 40% of what that prediction is. In 2018, 1.5% of enterprises were going to adopt a SASE first network approach. So that's up 38, call it 40% basically, it was 0. So what you're seeing from a market perspective is, and this is part of that coexistence, Brian, what you're seeing from a market effort is since 2020, you've had decision makers in IT are acutely aware of those niche security providers that aren't necessarily the elephant in the room. So 20 years ago or 10 years ago, if Oracle or IBM or Accenture came in from a consulting perspective, or Cisco, they were in the room, they were probably going to win the business. Now you've had this emergence of niche providers that focus on an acute piece of the network in and of itself. But the key to that, for them to be able to go mass market, for them to be adopted at a scale that makes sense for business, it has to be coexisting with whatever devices and network gear currently are deployed for that tech stack on that customer. And from an MSP perspective, they're probably going to adopt 1 or 2 of those niche providers and say, these are our lead providers. This is what we're taking to the market. Our endpoints are going to set on this. Our users are going to use this tool until something better comes, or it becomes an economic decision to say, hey, this doesn't make sense and we're going to increase here. But that SASE first approach of, we're going to create the edge. It's going to be cloud-based, regardless of where you're connecting. It's going to be a friendly network connection, meaning you don't have to, if you have a Teams call and you're running late for a meeting, you're not having to log into this VPN, log out of that VPN, get access to a network drive to open a PowerPoint. All of those tunnels are going to be built inside of Nord Layer, where as long as you're on the device that has Nord Layer deployed, which that's going to be part of your initial deployment, you're going to have access to that. So those site-to-site security networks are going to be based on what kind of legacy equipment and network setup do they have. Like if they have AS400 mainframe, for example, that's going to be wildly difficult.
There's so many of them out there.
Yeah, right. The financial world is almost entirely built on it, right? Like to make those applications cloud native, that lift is far too heavy. I think there's 2 companies in the country that focus on rewriting AS400 applications to be cloud native, and it's wildly expensive. So now you're saying, if you have a modernized network of any capacity, you're probably seeing companies shift into that hybrid cloud architecture. But keep in mind, like let's not get away from this on-prem conversation. A month ago, the AWS CEO delivered a podcast results from their quarterly earnings. And part of his statement was 80% of IT spend is still on-prem. So if I had to guess,
wow,
I would say 50,
he said
right?
that, did he?
Yeah,
80?
80% still on-prem. So your resellers and your disties like CDW, SHI, they're already getting a lens into, hey, that spend is decreasing. It's decreasing at about 2% a year. So in a decade, it'll still be 70%. So that need to connect to your on-prem equipment is not going to go away anytime soon. Therefore, if you're developing products and enhancing user adoption, like we've been talking about, you have to be able to have multiple paths to connection, multiple routing policies. And if you don't, you're not going to be deployed across mass market. So what we've seen is coexistence is the lead effort to be able to go into customers, go into partners, and be able to tell them it's an easy deployment. But beyond that coexistence, is there protection? How do we know it's secure? Prove the security. Can you demonstrate security? That's the big thing you're going to see upcoming in the market is tell me about your compliance. Tell me about high trust. Tell me about SOC reporting. Being able to demonstrate that. And here's another big thing the market is starting to see, George. Cyber insurance has gone up 300 to 400% on premium since 2019.
No argument.
Taken
No,
to
it's
the clean,
definitely going up.
Companies got taken to the cleaners once the pandemic started. Lloyd's of London underwrites cyber insurance. Lloyd's of London was founded in like 1450. Cyber insurance wasn't a big deal to them. Now you're seeing underwriters like Woodruff Sawyer and Mackle come into the market and say, hey, you got to redo how you look at this. The security posture that your customers are stating that they have is nowhere near the truth. So that one-page questionnaire about do you have backup in place? Do you have resiliency?
What one page? That's old
now
school.
It's like
man.
10. Yeah, it's like 10 now,
that.
right?
It's each side now on multiple pages.
You can use like a real book spine to bind these things, guys. Come on, it's not wire bound, it's not stapled. You've got like a full blown like ancient Egyptian spine on the back of those things.
It's like
100%.
a script you discovered in a pyramid. I mean,
so just to be sure I got it, Tyler, I just want to make sure I envision the plumbing here. So you have all of these pieces, some on-prem, some in the cloud. You're building these tunnels back to Nord's cloud-based platform, right? So these things are always on, right? You're going to add users and create permissions as to who gets access to what, right? You then deploy this, this client-side application to the endpoint, right? Hopefully, Mac, Windows, mobile, whatever, right? And then basically whatever they're allowed to have access to, boom, 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 you're on, right? You don't have to jump through multiple, VPNs or actually have to worry about access controls across all of these back end systems separately. You're literally using Nord's platform as the front end in order to get access to the kingdom behind it. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And if they're not on that dedicated server and tunnel that has those routing policies, they're not going to be able to log into their applications. So they're not going to be able to get access to Salesforce without being on that encrypted tunnel. And that is the case across any application or network drive.
So this is the zero trust flip, right? It's, hey, it's not open to the public world. You have to come through the gatekeeper in order to get access. Otherwise, we've locked you out. And that way it's not internet facing until you've authenticated past Nord, basically.
That's exactly right. And keep in mind, one customer can have multiple dedicated tunnels. So it's not like they have to build every routing policy on one server. They can have multiple servers. One could be called Team 1, Team 2, Team 3, Team 4, and each dedicated server is going to have various routing policy. They're going to auto connect to the server that makes sense for them. They're only going to have visibility into the servers that they've been added to as part of their admin panel and team. So when it comes to jumping around, they shouldn't have to do that. But here's the best part, George. It doesn't impact their day-to-day journey on Chrome or any of your browsers. There's built-in threat block, which is your malware protection. But if you work for Stanford or Columbia or a university of some sort that's doing a lot of research and you're all over the place on the web, you get your threat block protection, but Nord Layer is not going to block you from accessing certain applications or websites unless there's been some form of a breach recently that's unresolved. That comes from our VPN side where we're monitoring at global scale what threats are in the market, which have been resolved, et cetera. So that's part of that built-in protection is now you can go to Amazon and do your Christmas shopping and then keep the same browser up with the same protected tunnel. You're blind to the bad actors that are in the market. They can't trace any IP. There's no drop-off point they can trace. And you still get to work and be protected. It's part of that social pressure. The social pressure you're seeing now, where it's not just IT that owns security. Everybody's involved in security. So that social pressure across the C-suite, where 3 years ago they could say, yeah, here's our cyber insurance policy. The CEO signed off on it. He agrees with our network team. Now you got a company security scorecard that's come into the market and said, hey, let's audit some of these responses. We're not only going to interview the CIO or CTO that originally submitted the cyber insurance network posture questionnaire. We're going to interview the CFO. We're going to interview the CEO. We're going to get video validation that they're agreeing to what their network posture is. So they have no choice but to become familiar with this. They may not know Kubernetes cloud configurations in Microsoft Azure, but they're damn well going to know what your basic security posture needs to be. That's that
Well,
social
when
pressure.
the policy's going up 300%, you're damn right they're going to know.
They have to.
Lisa, I see this. What do you got for me?
All right, cool. Hey, this is really good stuff, Tyler. Thank you.
Thank you.
So does it require, like, obviously ConnectWise, we use Meraki, right? So I've been working from home for 2 years now. When I want a VPN in, I, click on my little Meraki exclusions and I VPN into the applications I need to, right? So does your software still, does it talk to the cloud-based, VPN routers? Is that, are you replacing that? Does the Merakis and the Ubiquities and those things go away?
Those on-prem VPNs like Cisco Meraki, anything that's been in
But
place,
that's
like
cloud-based, right?
yeah.
Is it Meraki cloud-based?
It's
But it would
hardware
still-
driven.
Yeah, it would still be.
think.
It would serve as a flavor of a VPN that's connected to the network. We would replace the Cisco Meraki, so you would decom the Meraki. And here's the use case we're seeing a lot with Cisco Meraki is configuration into various wide-reaching applications that are on-prem, colo-based, et cetera. So we had 2 use cases last week where we came in and displaced Cisco Meraki, where the customer said we couldn't configure it, the routing wasn't working, or users were dropping off. And like you just mentioned a good point, Lisa, you have to log into the Cisco Meraki VPN. With Nord, it's going to auto connect you to your tunnel that already has everything in place.
Pretty
So you're not logging in, logging out. You're going to have access to all those files and applications, but it's going to auto connect in your control panel where you don't even see anything. You're not touching anything. So at that point, your journey's protected. That east to west journey that everybody's talking about, where you click one bad phishing thing, you have one bad actor, we're protecting that piece and giving you the access.
Do you also give them access to, I know you talked about bad actors and URL blocking and stuff like that. Do you give the network admins access to that to actually put in some of their own sites, or is that all managed by you guys?
So when it comes to web filtering, we don't do any web filtering. So we would do the whitelisting to the applications you need to live on that tunnel. So when it comes to web filter, like you're talking about blacklisting, like web filtering, we wouldn't get into that space in any capacity. This is going to be immediate protection across the journey, access to the applications. But if someone wanted to block YouTube, for example, you couldn't block YouTube.
That's fine, but give me an example. So I click on the wrong browser application that I want to go to, and it's going to take me to a bad actor. You're going to block that.
It's going to immediately pop up that 404 error blocked.
Okay.
And then, but here's the thing. You could do that at 8 a.m. because we have detected some breach in some capacity with that network. But at 4 p.m., you may be able to access that website. What we're saying is our threat intelligence. We see that there's some form of capacity of a breach or an exposure. There's maybe a rumor, et cetera. We're going to hold off on access to that website until we figure that out. It could be 8:05 a.m. and then you're good at 8:10 a.m. It depends on how quickly that's been resolved.
So you guys are doing that on a global level.
On a global level, that's exactly right. So we're scraping, you look at NordVPN is battle tested when it comes to being able to have visibility into the broader market of threat acting, bad actors, et cetera. We're taking that intelligence, putting it on NordLayer via our threat block program that's built in as part of the feature. And that's part of that journey protection where users can't access that site. I would say it's probably 1% of sites users try to access.
So let's say if it's a BYOD, right? It's not a corporate owned resource, and somebody needs to go do Amazon shopping, right? It's not work related. Is the system intelligent enough to know what traffic is corporate traffic versus non-corporate traffic?
We're not doing any of that reporting when it comes to like analog traffic or scraping traffic. No, I mean, what our reporting is going to give you access to is to user activity when it comes to accessing the tool, logging out, changing a credential of some sort. But it's not going to say that, you know, Lisa as a user, here's the 48 websites she went to in the past 24 hours.
Got it.
We may
Totally
get to
get
that
it.
point one day, but based on the threat block protection, that requirement isn't something that prevents us from moving forward. Again, with that, like that MSP market up to 1,000 users, that's typically not a strict requirement. Now you get into like a healthcare company that has 25,000 users and they're working from home, and you got contractors and staff augment. That's going to be more of a requirement in that capacity, but it would have to be a pretty compliance-driven use case.
Got it. Pete, what's up, man?
Hey guys.
How are you?
Hey, so you guys got me in my favorite place. All right, Tyler, good to see you up there on the podium there.
Good to see you.
Well, you can't see me, but I'm driving. I'm in my favorite place in the truck, but I'm just not pulling the trailer today. So
There you go.
I can hear your transmission thanking you right now.
right,
Yeah,
right.
and his credit card bill.
That's right.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at the gas mileage and it says 19.2. So that's way better than 8.2. So, but
How are you,
hey,
Pete?
Tyler, you know, I'm doing well. Doing well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm great. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. So one of the things I've heard you say a couple times, and I'm curious as to the full capability of how deep, you know, this Nord locker goes, or the threat that you've got there. What does this, you know, entail? Is it down in the servers at the application layers? Is it just on the VPN? Where does it sit, and how does it work?
And you're talking about the threat, like that threat block piece that's looking at the journey. That's going to be primarily on whatever web browser they're using, Pete. So if that application is operated in any capacity of a SaaS model where they've got to log in via browser, that's where that's going to come into play. But if it's a legacy application that's just setting on like a bare metal server and it's like an old platform they use, it's not going to touch that. But I don't know if those applications are necessarily being exploited. I mean, if like we go back to the AS400 example, right? Those mainframe applications, if they're only used by a handful of users, I mean, AS400s are already almost impenetrable when it comes to security. That's the reason the financial world has kept these, right? Sarbanes-Oxley required the security parameters, and that's why they kept them in place. And they're just difficult to be cloud native. But it's not gonna touch any of your legacy stuff. Anything that touches a web browser, it absolutely will.
But on the other platform, right, the SASE based platform, you could still tunnel into the premise based or colo based servers, right? You build that tunnel back to the Nord platform on the front end, and then they can still client server style application should still work the same way. Yeah.
That's exactly right. It's going to be fully encrypted. So the way Nord layer is configured is there's going to be 1 gig of throughput per user. So that 1 gig of throughput couldn't even enhance the speed, and you're getting the encrypted security effort. But the only thing we need from the customer or the MSP that has line of sight into that environment is the backend need for the site-to-site tunnel, which takes 2 to 3 minutes to build. They're going to see that activate on their admin panel as part of their dedicated server. And at that point, it's in place. So they're not having to revisit that and reconfigure. That's in place at a static level for the remainder of that environment until they decom it, of course.
So if they start off with, Lisa said a Meraki, I said SonicWall, Pete said, I know whatever his favorite thing is, you could VPN into the appliance or physical device. And if they decide to remove that from the equation, is there some sort of application that they install in order to build the back end of that tunnel? How does that work then?
That's configured on the back end of their admin panel. So we would work with their team directly. Our sysadmin team works directly with the customer team based on some basic configuration needs. We would build that site-to-site tunnel. So it depends on like, what's the application? We just need credentials. Like, what does the sec tunnel look like? What IV version? It could be, there's a few different criteria that we need, but we would build that directly on the dedicated tunnel.
Okay, so there is a way for you to eliminate the hardware endpoint on the colo or server in the closet based scenario, right? We could do it all software based.
That's exactly right. And you look at what is happening in colo, like what are you seeing the most of? Your standard environment for 1,000 user company used to be 10 racks and maybe in a private cage. You had your ping power, your pop. A lot of what was hosted there, like there wasn't, you didn't know what was hosted there, right? Like Equinix didn't know what this private cage actually hosted. They just knew that it was HP servers and it had, here's the power level. Now in order to create that visibility, what you're starting to see companies say is, we need to know exactly what kind of usage we're getting, what kind of stranded activity are we paying for from a cloud model, et cetera. So that visibility into the network applications, what's hosted on each server, et cetera, when you start shifting that and virtualizing into some form of a cloud adoption, we're going to connect directly to AWS, Azure, Alibaba, Google Cloud, any cloud provider. If they want to keep those colo applications inside of a data center, or maybe they bring them back to their corporate office because it's only 3 or 4 servers now, we can still connect to a local network drive that hosts those applications.
Awesome. Lisa, what else you got for us?
Hey, Lisa.
Sorry, I keep on muting myself.
Okay.
Do we have any ROI? Obviously, it sounds like cloud-based SASE is going to be less expensive than on-prem hardware and easier to manage.
In terms of what, yeah, I mean, I think in terms of your cost savings, immediately you're not going to have to renew any licenses when it comes to like servers, hardware, et cetera. Then here's the biggest thing you're looking at, Lisa, is when they sunset that equipment. So they're going to eventually, Dell's going to reach out and say, we're no longer supporting this version of server. That's primarily what's leading your SMB and mid-market customers to look at cloud-based applications. They're going to run dry the term they currently have. That ROI, when it comes to cloud-based, and there's a company in the PAX8 portfolio and in the MSP market that does a great job of this. They're called Nerdio. And they go into those AVD environments that are, so VDI, DAS flavor of a remote desktop. The big thing that they do is show you the stranded usage and then reallocate that usage. When cloud first came into the market, the ROI was difficult. And here's why. You didn't know what you were really buying from a consumption perspective. You had your ingress, you had your egress. A lot of customers weren't privy to being charged for that. Now you've got companies like Nerdio, companies like Nord that run on a hyper-converged cloud platform that are saying, we're not going to charge you based on expected usage. We're going to charge you precise usage. And anything that's stranded, we're going to reallocate throughout your network. So you can carry over that usage to the next month, to the next term, et cetera. That's what companies are asking for now, is we don't want to pay ingress and egress. That's not something we want to have to touch. So when you're uploading or downloading applications into the cloud, you're probably going to do that in a small phase fashion. We're going to build the tunnel that's connecting to that, but the customer still has visibility into the dedicated tunnel that we're going to build. So in our dashboard, they're going to see what kind of server usage they have. So if they have 5 different servers and they're only using 10% on each server, maybe we shrink that down and they grow at their own rate. That's what they're asking for, is visibility and a skeletal view into what this consumption is. How do we manage it? How do we know what it does? That's almost every conversation we have when it comes to SMB and mid-market, saying we're scared of cloud. We don't want a $7,500 bill because somebody exported 85 PDFs on a Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. You know, I mean, it's like, it could be anything, right?
I do think the other cost savings though, which is worth mentioning, right? The physical appliance, right? You said you still have to keep it running. You still have to license it, right? Meraki's a good example that Lisa brought up before. There's also the people who have built VPN servers separate of the firewall, right? They still got to maintain and upgrade and probably license those servers unless they're doing like an open source style thing. So like that goes away. You don't have to maintain and manage those systems, right? And then the other thing that's worth mentioning is when you pivot to the cloud side, if you're using an Azure VPN, if you're using a Google VPN, whatever it is, those cost too, right? And so effectively you can begin to standardize on both sides of the aisle, the premise-based resources, colo-based resources, or cloud-based resources. Effectively, you can just stop using all of like 4 different technologies and just standardize is what it sounds like. And it sounds like you're going to be able to actually know what your cost basis is because it'll just flex up and flex down based on the actual user count. Yeah.
That's exactly right. I think the human capital piece is probably the hardest to put an ROI on.
Yeah.
But here's a stat, George. The unemployment rate for security architects in the market is 0.08%. So
Yeah.
those are like cloud architects, security architects, right? They're overemployed, and they're probably doubling down with contract work or some form of 1099 work. That human capital piece, when you partner with specific providers or cloud-based anything, you're being able to say, we no longer have to worry about a network engineer, sysadmin doing this. That doesn't mean they're off the payroll. Like, that's a big thing I want to clarify, is they're not off the payroll. How do you modernize your internal IT team to be a profit center? For example, we had a customer, or I've had a customer about 2 years ago that was a construction company, and they had a 4-person IT team. There were about 300 total employees. What they did when they went cloud first, they worked with a company called Procore to go cloud first. It's a SaaS application in the construction world. It does everything for you, basically. Shout out Procore. I didn't get paid for that. But what they did is they took their IT team and turned a new sub business underneath their regular company, helping subcontractors build and maintain quotes. So they had a database experience, they had network experience. They started an entire new vertical with their IT team that said, we've already got the skill set here. Let's go ahead and do something new, create effectively a new DBA and product under our parent company. That's what you're asking companies to do, is modernize your IT staff. Yeah, there has been a systemic role in place for people that have been your sysadmin for 12 years, but upskill them, teach them to help the company in ways that aren't a drain on the balance sheet, but a green line on the balance sheet.
Hey, when you get more time, you got to use it differently, right? I mean, that's awesome. It also takes a lower level person to be able to add, move, change, right? I mean, you don't need to touch 5 different, servers in order to get a user online. So that sounds exciting to me. Less time. Time is money, as we just heard. I think from an MSP perspective, that probably is a good thing, right? Because if you're spending less time and you don't need a level 3 guy in order to provision a user, and your regular people that are in the trenches can literally just press 2 buttons and make it work. I mean, that's what you're looking for, right?
That's exactly right.
Sounds good. I mean, listen, this was a great introduction into what's out there, right? Because I think there's just so many different aspects to this, and some are older concepts, some are, kind of these hybrid, and then some are completely cloud. And as you just said, I'm going to use that stat. I didn't realize the CEO of Amazon AWS came out and said 80%, 80 of IT spending is still on premise. It just boggles my mind, because we've been hearing SaaS and cloud for so long, but it takes a long time for that number to switch.
I mean, it's huge. I think, and a lot of that's driven by your disties, right? They're going to easily renew hardware that they've already got that business in their pocket. They don't want that to be shifted into virtual model, but yeah, 80%, it's wild.
Yeah.
Think about it, right? I mean, even if you consider like an IDN, like a massive for-profit healthcare company, they're going to have their own data center. They're going to have multiple data centers. That's considered on-prem spend. Now, they may build private clouds within their data center. That's not to say they can't do that.
80% covers private cloud. That's important to know.
Like, you could build, if you had a VMware deployment, you can build private clouds, but you're still buying hardware to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you're still buying hardware to do that. So where the workloads exist may be skewed a little bit, but 80% of your on-prem, 80% of that file and application spend is a dotted line to on-prem.
Wow. Everybody remember that. And when you go talk to your customers, then you can use that in your conversation.
But you
Tyler,
also want to tell with that and say, but it's moving quickly. You should virtualize from a security perspective.
Yes, 100%. Tyler, it was great meeting you, by the way. Go ahead, Pete.
I got to say one thing though.
Go ahead.
I spent all that week with Tyler on the bus and outside and at the event. I learned more about Nord in the last hour than I did that whole time.
It's the beer and the bags.
I don't know. I just didn't know it was that expansive of a service.
I should have, Pete drives the truck separately. We're all in the bus. And what I realized is I need to be by the influencers. I need to be sitting with Pete in his truck. That's where you get the windshield time, right? Like, that's the big key. Because by the time we got to the hotel, everybody was scattered. We were doing our own thing. So yeah, Pete, next time I call shotgun on the first road trip.
All right, you're kicking Kenny P out right out the door, 55 miles an hour.
You heard it here, Kenny P. I'm shotgun next time.
Yeah. No, Tyler, by the way, great meeting you in person. Love this kind of debrief on what's out there, right? I think like now we have a much better understanding of what the tech does and kind of where you guys are going. So I really appreciate that, you giving us the background information. Obviously for everybody in PAX 8 land, you can get some more information there through the PAX 8 kind of channel. Otherwise, hit Tyler online. He's on LinkedIn. He's pretty responsive. You can see, you can get him practically anywhere. This session was recorded. They're put it online on mspinitiative.com that we can go back and like rewind and like before you call Tyler, you gotta like, but you said this, yeah, and then you can make sure that you hold them to the fire there. So you find that at mspinitiative.com. Anyone who will be at CompTIA next week, looking forward to see you guys in person. Again, Chicago summertime and a little bit of water time too. That'd be great. Otherwise, before you know it, we're going to be in September. That's going to be conference season, September, October, November. Buckle up because it's going to be crazy and you might burn your hair down, but I got none of that left. Thanks everyone for jumping on. For everyone that's going to watch this, feel free to keep jump on live Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Otherwise, Tyler, catch you out on the next one, my friend.
George, good seeing you. Pete, Lisa, Matthew, Brian, Sade, great talking to you guys. Look forward to the next one.
Take it easy, guys.
Hey, Tyler. See you, George.
Bye.